Hello, and welcome to this tutorial for the board game Stanza. At this moment it doesn't get a very high rating on BoardGameGeek.com, but I don't quite agree with that. It's an unusual game, and its fairly short playing time can be a challenge to get as much done as you can in the few turns that you have. I'll explain it to you, so you can have a go and have your own opinion on it. You are going to play 3 or 4 or 5 rounds, depending on how many players there are, then 3 more turns, and then the game is over. Then you will have a scoring, and whoever has the most points wins the game. You only get points at the end. This is this game's icon for points. So again, you play 3 to 5 rounds and 3 turns, and then the game is over and has a point scoring. What can you score points with at the end of the game? You can see the list on the sheet that you can keep with you for the whole game, and also on the score sheet. Let's have a look. You get points for masterpieces. That's when you've placed your columns on these points in the rooms. What they are, I'll explain later. You get points for where you are on the money track. This is the money track, and you get the points for where your little boat is at the end of the game. You get these points if near the end you chose to leave the game early. As I said before, you get 3 more turns after the final round. You're allowed to opt out at any point to get these extra points. You get points for bookshelves. If you've covered up spaces that have points on them, you get those points. You get points that are on your bonus tiles. Some of these tiles have end of game scoring. This is when you get those. Also, we have a bonus tile majority. That means you just look at who has the most bonus tiles to get these points. And finally, you get points for your museum collection. During the game you can collect pieces of art. Whoever has the highest score with these numbers written on them gets the most points. Other players with art get them as well, but fewer points. There is an extra rule with this. Please look it up in the rulebook after you've started playing the game. The last thing is that you lose 5 points if this money token that you have is flipped over. I'll recap that for you. You get points at the end of the game for masterpieces, where you are on the money track, if you've covered up points on the bookshelves, if you left the game early, if you have bonus tiles that give you extra points, if you have the most bonus tiles, and if you have the most points in art pieces. You lose 5 points if your money token is flipped over. You don't quite know what all of this means yet, so let's find out. How do you play the game? During a round, all players will be moving around clockwise on the board. When 2 of these rooms have no more portraits in them, the round is over. So again, when 2 rooms are empty, the round is over. What do you do when it's your turn? You take your player token and walk 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 spaces. You walk on the portraits. The portrait that you end on is the one you take. So again, when it's your turn, you walk 1 to 4 spaces on the portraits and you take the portrait that you stop on. You put that portrait that you just took in the first position of the top row here on your own player mat. Always in the top row and always in the first position. And then you choose what you want to do. The first thing you can do is pass, and that's the end of your turn. Or you can say you want money. In that case, you look at your little boat where it is on the money track, and then fill up your money to that amount. You don't take that much money, you fill it up to the amount. For example, if you still have 5 money and your boat is on 10, you take 5 money from the bank. In that case, you had 5 money and you took 5 money, so now you have 10 money. The last thing you must do is slide this money token one space to the right. Yes, it bumps off a portrait, and when the money token comes off your player mat, you must flip it over and get 5 minus points at the end of the game. So when you take money, slide this token. A little recap here. When it's your turn, you move and take the portrait you landed on. Then you can pass or you can take money. And now we can get to the third and last thing you can do when it's your turn. This is the thing that you will be doing the most in this game because it's what gets you points and other advantages. After you've moved and took the portrait, you can bring a portrait down to the bottom row, pay money for that, and then get points or advantages. Again, bring down a portrait and pay for it. How much you have to pay depends on which space you place it. The amount is written right above it. How does that go? First, we'll start with the easy one. Let's say you ended your move in the red room. That means you can do the red action using the red portraits. So, I take this portrait with the red icon on it, place it on the space that cost me 1 money. The portrait that I just bumped off is discarded, and I pay 1 money to the bank. I have now activated the red room. What can I do? First, I start by counting how many red portraits I have in the bottom row. I have 1, 2, 3 red portraits. Let's look at the board game. I see 1, 2, 3 rewards for the red room. I have 3 portraits, so I get this reward. I get to take 3 books and put them on my bookshelf. That's it. Little side note, when I take the books, I can only take 1 from each color. I'm not allowed to take more than 1 of the same color. So let me quickly repeat that. I'm in the red room. I bring a red portrait from the top row down to the bottom row. I discard the portrait that I just bumped. I pay the money. Then I count how many red portraits I have, and I get that many rewards. That doesn't just go for the red room, that goes for every single room on the board, except the bonus tile room. Let's have a closer look at that. Here again are the rewards in the red room, the green room, the yellow room, the white room, and the blue room. Now let's make it more complicated. I'm going to do the same thing again. This time I have a problem. I want to activate the red room, but the problem is I'm not in the red room. What do I do? Not that complicated actually. I take one of my red figures and place it back into the supply. And now I'm allowed to do exactly the same what I did before. Bring down the portrait, pay for it, count all the red, and do the action. And that's how you do actions, not just for the red room, but for all the colors. If you're in the room, it's free. If you're not in the room, you pay the figure of that color to be allowed to do it. Now that you know what to do, let's have a look at the rewards. In the blue room, depending on how many blue portraits you have in the bottom row, you can move your little boat 1 or 2 or 3 spaces. If your boat happens to reach or pass a space where you see this little white figure, you get that one from the supply. The white figure you can use as any color. It's a wild card. We've already seen the red room, so let's move on to the green room. The reward here is, depending on how many portraits you have in your bottom row, you can place 1 or 2 or 3 discs. You place your discs in one of these 4 spaces. Not this one, only here. And just like the books, you have to divide. But what are those discs? Well, remember that you count your portraits to see what your reward is? If you want a reward of 3, but you only have 2 portraits, you just remove one of the discs from that color and you get an extra point. So for example, if I only have 2 red portraits, but I really want to get 3 books, I just remove the disc from this red space, and now I can take 3 books. The next room. This one's easy. Depending on how many yellow portraits you have in your bottom row, you can take either this piece of art, or this piece of art, or this one. You place the art on your own player mat. In the next room, depending on how many white portraits you have, you can take 1 figure, or 2, or 3. And, as you may remember, you spent these figures, so you can do an action in a room even though you yourself aren't actually there. And just like the books and the discs, you can't take more than 1 of each color. Let's recap. In the blue room, you get to move your boat forward. In the red room, you get to take books and place them on your shelves. In the green room, you get to place discs so that for the future turns, you can bring up your number to a higher reward. In the yellow room, you can get pieces of art. And in the white room, you can get figures that allow you to do a room when you're not actually there. You can only take the colored ones, not the white ones. We've done all the colored rooms, but I'm going to come back to them. Because as you can see on the board, the rewards don't just stop at 3. For example, the red room, you could even have 5 red portraits in the bottom row. And you could have a disc in the red space. That means you have way more power than 3. So which reward can you choose in that case? If you go higher than 3, you have created a masterpiece. You take one of your columns and place it on the right space. That space is now blocked from other players and you get those points at the end of the game. So again, when you do an action in a room and you have a power of 4 or higher, you can choose to make a masterpiece and place your column on the points. You can only have one of your columns in each room. We're almost there. The last room left is the bonus room. Rule number 1. You may only stop in the bonus room if you plan to get a bonus tile. If not, you can't stop here. Rule number 2. You may only take a bonus tile if you meet the requirements on the tile. For that, check the manual. You can do that after you've played 1 or 2 turns. Rule 3. If you're going to take a bonus tile, you must first pay one of your figures. Take the tile and place one of your discs in its place. That's it. I'm not going to repeat it. Most of it's depicted on the board and the tiles. Also, what bonus you get from the tile you can look up in the rulebook. I am going to recap this. When it's your turn, you move 1 to 4 spaces on the portraits, then you take the portrait you landed on and put it in the top row. And then you choose what to do. Pass, take money, or do the action with bringing down the portrait, paying for it, and get the reward from the room. If you get confused, look at the board to get help from the symbols or consult the rulebook. After the final round and the 3 extra turns, get out the scoring pad and count up your points. That's it. I hope you have a clear sense of what to do in this game and what you're doing it for. I hope you enjoy playing it. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.